Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Slam, the world's greatest podcast. We review every single DC superhero ever made, and this week we're going to talk about Green Lantern. I'm your co-host Mike Allen, as always, and joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the Green Lantern origins.
Yeah,
pretty exciting.
That's right. So let's just say quickly, I'm a huge fan of the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. The Alan Scott Green Lantern is a different beast altogether, which we're going to talk about. But let's just jump right into this. You know what? We never discussed who's going to talk about what. Which comic did you want to summarize on this episode, Josh?
I would love to talk about the second one. Maybe we can tackle the third one together, because I feel like there's a lot of things in that one that are kind of iffy by today's standards in the writing, so maybe we can kind of both jump on that.
Okay, so then I will do All-American Comics number 16, the first appearance of Alan Scott as Green Lantern. Now, before we get into this, why don't we talk briefly about this costume? You know, the thing about Green Lantern is his name's Green Lantern, right?
Right.
So you think green, right? Like the Hal Jordan Green Lantern has got green, black, and white. White and black are not colors, so really he's only one color, green, right? And the black makes him the green pop out.
Right.
Here with Alan Scott, we've got green pants, we've got Christmas red, yellow straps around his boots, a big baggy red shirt, a yellow circle around his lantern, a purple cape, and a purple domino mask. You know, I love the charm of the green, of the Golden Age superheroes, but this is a pretty rough costume.
It's awful. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, it just kind of looks like a guy who put on a mask and a cape over top of his clothes. Like, even the costume itself doesn't feel very costumey. Yeah, his pants are kind of green, and he definitely has a Green Lantern on his shirt. But,
it's not a symbol, it's just like a picture.
Yeah, it's like a pic. Yeah. It's like if Batman had a picture of himself on his shirt. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But I don't love this costume. And even the origin is very different. Like, this feels like a completely different character to what Green Lantern is today.
Oh, he is. He's absolutely different. Yeah. And it's the thing is the once again, the Earth 1, Earth 2 split makes this A-okay, because we don't have to worry about this, how this fits in. But what happened was, after Crisis, when they united the Earths together, they had to fit this origin in with the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. And so they came up with this convoluted explanation where, back in the 40s, something. And anyway, they found a way to tie it into the Green Lantern core, but it still didn't work. I really don't think merging the Earths fixed anything. I think it made it DC far worse. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. So for now, we're going to talk about All-American Comics number 16. And Josh has the power to flip pages. Okay, so hopefully you're following along at home with your copy of All-American Comics number 16 from 42, I think.
Right. And if you are an audio listener, we've also been starting to do a video component to the podcast where we actually have visuals up on screen to kind of reference what we're talking about, and the audience can also kind of see what we're commenting about. So you can head on over to our YouTube channel,
actually our website,
or Facebook, or our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. So a little plug in there.
And also, we should say that we've always kind of talked about the pages as if people could see them, but now some people can.
Right.
Depending on what platform you're listening to us on or watching us on. We should also point out this character was created by, this is not his real name, Matt Dillon. Actually, while I'm summarizing, can you Google the creator? Because it's Martin Nodell. I believe that's
Martin Nodell.
Yeah,
it's Mark Dello.
Yeah.
In this.
But that's not his real name. But the creator of Green Lantern, the co-creator, he was alive I won't say but he was alive well into the 2000s, I think, because I've seen him at a few conventions, still doing sketches and stuff. So unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. Again, we refuse to do research on the show, so I can't give you the exact date. But anyway.
Not that that's super important.
Yeah, but you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, the creator's name is important, right?
Right.
I mean, how he died and when he died, not as important.
Yeah.
But anyway, Bill Finger, also we should point out, is the co-creator of Batman, and he also wrote the story. So this starts out, see, again, I'd never read this issue, but it starts out with, we meet Alan Scott, the blonde-haired Alan Scott, talking to a friend of his. And I didn't know this backstory, but apparently Alan Scott's an engineer, and he outbids someone on a contract for a
railroad.
For a railroad. So, and then I love how fast these stories move. In 3 panels, we get the introduction of the 2 characters and the anticipation that something bad might happen to them. In the next panel, the plane explodes.
The train.
The train explodes.
Yeah.
And in the 3rd panel, everyone's dead except Alan Scott.
It is, yeah, this one really gets to it right away.
And it just, talk about compressed storyline or compressed storytelling. But anyway, so then we jump in, and right away, Alan Scott sees this lantern. And this is, again, a weird kind of device, but he's already... He goes into a coma, he doesn't really hear the voice, but we hear the voice, and the voice comes from the Green Lantern, and it says, "I am the green flame of life, listen, chosen one, and hear the tale of the Green Lantern." So then much of the story becomes a flashback after this point. So we flash back, and we flash back to many years ago in China, right? And we see a meteor falling, and it lands in the ground, and it's kind of like a big green flame that comes out of it. And a voice comes from the flame, and it's speaking to these ancient Chinese people, and it says, three times shall I flame, green. Oh, see, again, this is a problem with Golden Age writing, is they don't space the words out to make it fit a sentence. They'll put like a hyphen and like the middle of the most important word, or they'll put a word down, like just anyway. So it actually says, 3 times shall I flame green, first to bring death, second to bring life, third to bring power. So then now we're kind of following along and finding out how that's going to come about, right? So one of the guys takes it's kind of like molten metal, and he fashions it into like an ancient looking lantern, like something you'd see like a genie in, right? And then we see basically the villagers are angry at him, so like, death to Chang, burn the evil books, die demon. And so then the lamp glows green, and everyone's like kind of cowering in fear. And then they're like, oh, the prophecy of the flame. 3 times shall I flame green, first to bring death. And all the people that were attacking Chang die. Then on the next page, we see the lantern appears in America.
Years later.
Yeah, years later. And it doesn't say exactly how many years it was in China. But now... it's still the same lantern, but then this guy Joe takes the lantern and he fashions it. He's like, oh, I'm gonna take this lantern and make it, or I'm gonna take this
lamp and turn it into like a lantern.
Yeah, like a lantern. So then he fashions it into what at the time was like a typical, like I guess, like a gas lantern. And so
we should also say that this guy is living in an insane asylum.
Yes.
And they were just kind of like gave him scraps to do some artwork, and this is what he has come up with, is creating a lantern out of this old lamp.
So what an odd choice.
And it cures him of his insanity, and he's able to kind of just walk free.
Right. So he's looking at the lantern, he's like, what's happening? I feel so queer. And it's glowing. And then it says, what am I doing here? I should be at my office. Where am I? And then above it, the caption says, 3 times shall I flame green, second to bring life. So this is its way of bringing life, right? And so then he walks out of the asylum, and he goes on to his new life. And then the narration picks up, and it says, now fate stretched out her long arm and brought the lantern to Alan Scott. So then the lantern is talking to Alan Scott. And, it's like, you've heard the tale of Green Lantern. You are to have my power. Power shall be yours, blah, blah, blah. Right? So basically it's explaining, and now we're going to jump to the next page. And he's like, oh, to have the power, I must always carry the Green Lantern with me. Now, again, this is one of the weirdest things about Green Lantern. His name is Green Lantern, but he wears a ring.
Right.
The ring is powered, but it has to be charged up by a lantern, which will carry over to the Hal Jordan version. So he's actually here, and he says to himself, he says, to have the power, must I always carry the Green Lantern with me? ? And then the lantern says, what? It would be well for you to utilize part to make a ring. A ring with my flame. To renew its power, the ring must touch the lantern just thought of this idea now. I got it.
He gives him a DIY, like,
yeah, exactly.
Make a ring, you know.
Yeah.
Here's a little recipe to like use your powers without the lantern.
Right.
Yeah.
So then Alan Scott is like, okay, so then he's walking away, and he goes back to the train wreck, and he finds his friend, and he's like, oh, Jimmy, you said Decker might try something, that he wanted the bid to build this bridge. Now he'll get his wish. So now he's going to get revenge on Decker, right? Mm-hmm. So then he goes home, and now he's following the ring's advice, and he takes part of the metal and he makes a ring. Now this is the other weird thing. This Alan Scott's ring is a ring with, again, like, it's not just a symbol, it's like an actual
like mini lantern
on the ring. So he's looking at it. He's like, why? I must have been mad. I wanted to kill a man, Decker. No, I must fight him another way, right? Mm-hmm. So now the ring's kind of influencing him. So he uses the ring to fly. He's like, using his willpower, he just starts to fly at the speed of light, by the way. And he's floating up in the air, and he's like, Decker's place. He finds Decker's place, and he's floating outside of it. Then he uses the ring to pass through the wall like a phantom. Oh, actually, he's invisible here, right? So he comes in. Yeah, I think he's invisible, right?
I think he's turning his form into kind of this, like, light form, I guess. Right.
So basically, the bad guys are like, or this is like the other guy. What's his name? Decker? He's like, you boys did a sweet job in blowing up the bridge. Now the government will take my bid. And then just at that moment, Alan Scott kind of appears, and they turn around like, what? A green light coming through the wall? And then it starts to appear, it's Alan Scott, the engineer. And then the bad guys are like, he should be dead in the wreck. It's a ghost, right? So they start firing their guns at him, but the bullets have no effect on him, right? So then they take a swing. So then he kind of materializes, and they take a swing with a knife, but it breaks on his body, right? Mm-hmm. And then they hit him over the head with something
like hard, a club or something, yeah.
Yeah. And then, but then as he's laying on the ground, he's like, curious, lead bullets and steel knives don't get me, but wood does. Guess I'm only immune to metals. Interesting. So, as we know later, Green Lantern cannot be affected or is vulnerable to anything that's wood. But at this point, either Alan Scott was wrong, or maybe this is what the writer was thinking. Maybe he is just immune to metals. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we'll find that out in later adventures. So, then he goes, I also seem to possess my normal strength, only my normal strength. So he just starts kicking and punching these guys, right? And he's like, it was good enough before, so I guess it will do for me in the future. So then he's like punching them out. And then he gets to Decker, and then he's like, I'm going to work on you, Decker. And then he picks him up and flies out. So now he's glowing green as he's carrying Decker out, mm-hmm. right? And then he flies along, and he's basically like, scaring him into signing a confession of what he did about the contract, right? So then he signs it, and then of course he passes out or has a heart attack and he dies. And then Alan Scott's like, dead. The shock was too much for him. He's paid for the lives lost in the wreck. Somehow I feel as if destiny has taken hold of my life, that this is only the beginning, that I must continue to fight against evil. And I love this actual shot of him kind of thinking. He's like, if I must fight evil beings, I must make myself a dreaded figure. I wonder if this guy wrote Batman's origin. He's like, I must have a costume that is so bizarre that once I am seen, I will never be forgotten. I will combine green and purple and red together into an ugly design, and I will call myself Green Lantern. And that's how the story ends. Dressed in his Christmas-colored costume.
Right.
He's like, and then we get the Alan Scott Green Lantern oath, which is not quite as poetic as the Hal Jordan one. And he says, and it starts out with an and I shall shed my light over dark evil, for the dark things cannot stand the light of the Green Lantern. And that is the end of the story.
Yeah, this one is not the worst origin we've talked about on Slam. But I will say, it when it works really well, I think, and then it falls apart when it's trying to like wrap up his story. Like this whole Decker nonsense is ridiculous.
Well, it doesn't. It's a cliche, especially now, and it doesn't really fit Green Lantern, in my opinion. Is that what you think?
Yeah, it doesn't really fit the character. Like writing off the character so quickly as like he signed the confession and he was so stressed out about it he had a heart attack and died immediately. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm Green Lantern now. Like it's so just I don't even know how to like what you would even call this. Like it's so rushed. Like they didn't really care about this part. They had an idea for this thing, like the lantern itself, and how it can become, it can, get into the possession of somebody and make them a superhero, but didn't really figure out the character's origin. But the lantern stuff, I think, works pretty well.
Yeah, actually, I like the lantern stuff, yeah. And again, drastically different from what's to come.
Right.
I mean, the Golden Age characters, I think once we get through all these Golden Age characters, we're going to see that there's a through line that's very different from the Silver Age characters. And one of them is that the Silver Age characters are more based in science, right? Like Green Lantern is a space cop. Hawkman is a space cop from Thanagar.
Right.
The Atom can shrink because of exposure to a white dwarf star. Who's the other one? The Flash. Like the Flash's origin is similar, but instead of going for a cigarette break and breathing in hard water fumes, he gets struck by lightning, which again is more scientific than just breathing in fumes. I mean, they're both science, but you get my point.
Right.
So yeah, definitely a different time. More magic in the Golden Age.
I also kind of like that the lantern can change throughout time. Right. And I almost feel like they could have just had the lantern permanently turn into a ring.
Yeah.
Because it goes from a lamp to a lantern that is now powering a ring. Like you already kind of see it transform already, right? So you can have the lantern part of it be the light that kind of goes from thing. So it's a little ridiculous, but I feel like looking at it through the lens of that time, right? Obviously now the lantern with like the recharging in the ring feels right because that's what we all know. But thinking about it just as this comic, it is kind of weird that they didn't choose to just change it again for the third time, like throughout the generations. Yeah,
that's a good point. But anyway, so we should say that this Green Lantern joined the JSA, the Justice Society, and he had a fairly successful run, throughout the 1940s. But along with almost all the superhero comics of the 40s, he was eventually canceled in the late 40s, I think. And he was never to be heard from again until Julius Schwartz got the idea to revive The Flash in 1956. Now, again, it's funny because as a kid, when I thought of how Showcase number 4 came out and then launched the Silver Age and everything changed overnight and comics got better and blah, blah, blah. When you look at what actually the timeline, like the Showcase number 4 was 1956. The second superhero revival was 3 years later, which is Green Lantern, Showcase number 22. That is a long time. So if you're a kid and you're 8 years old when Flash is revived, and now you're 11 years old, that's a very long time. Is. So, and also, I think Green Lantern and Flash both got maybe 4 appearances each before they got their own series. They were spread out every 6 months. So again, it wasn't overnight. It was a very long process before DC really got to be like, I mean, they were already the #1 company, but the Silver Age that I think of really began with the Justice League revival, where all the characters were back and all the characters were together, and that was not until I think 60 or 61. So anyway, it's just interesting to think of it that way. So now we're going to talk about Showcase number 22, featuring the first appearance of Hal Jordan, written by John Broome and drawn by legendary comics illustrator Gil Kane, who went on to also recreate or reboot the Atom by co-creating Ray Palmer. He went on to have a long run at Marvel doing Spider-Man, doing almost every single cover of the 70s. He innovated the graphic novel by creating a character called, Savage, I think it was. No, sorry, I don't think he created Savage, but again, all from the top of my head. But this is a very, very important creator, Gil Kane. If you're not familiar with him, this is some of his early work. Not as good as his later work, but still excellent.
Yeah, still fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Josh is going to tell us what happens in this issue.
Right. So, this is the origin of Hal Jordan. This is, I feel like, the origin that most people would be familiar with.
Right.
And we start off with this splash page of Hal in this weird kind of cockpit as he's like flying towards this crashed spaceship. We kind of see this spaceship crashed here, and we are introduced to this alien named Abin Sur, who has crash landed with the Lantern. He is one of the Green Lanterns of like this sector, and something has happened where he is dying. He's badly injured, and his last task is to find a replacement lantern. So he taps the ring to the lantern itself, and this beam of energy shoots out from the spaceship and kind of zips around Earth, crisscrossing around and searching far and wide for the best replacement. And we cut over to the Ferris Aircraft Company, where Hal Jordan is sitting in this cockpit, test piloting whatever this new ship is going to be, and this green light completely engulfs his this device and lifts it up into the air and shoots him over to this crashed spaceship. And we see Hal climb inside and start talking to Abin Sur, who is communicating with him via telepathy, which is pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. And he again kind of explains this whole origin of the lantern and how it must be passed on to somebody who's pure of heart, who is who has like bravery, all that good stuff. He scans him to make sure he has no fear. Right.
I just got to double check. Wait, no, I was right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember what happens here. Oh, right. So
flashback.
Yeah. He this is like him flashing back. We also kind of learn that he's weak to yellow light. So Hal now knows this, and he explains that the lantern is the battery, the ring that the ring powers, and he can create anything just with like his thoughts. And on this last page, we're kind of left with him taking the guy's clothes. Like, it doesn't materialize,
right,
like, I guess, originally. But he even says, the spaceman told me to take his special uniform, and I vowed to him that I would carry on with my, new responsibilities to the best of my ability. And we see him kind of training, lifting up these giant, like, cliff sides just with the lantern. And we're kind of promised this new era of the Green Lantern, which is pretty exciting.
Yes, and we should point out that as the series goes on, we learn further aspects of his origin, like we learned about the Guardians of the Universe, the Green Lantern Corps, and again, maybe the writers had planned that out, but at this point, they were probably making it up as they went along. And rather than naming himself after the Green Lantern Corps, which already exists, in the second last panel, he says, "I will adopt a secret identity. I'll call myself Green Lantern after the power battery." So that's how he originally thought of his name. He just made it up himself, which I think is interesting. He also does not have a mask in this story. Now, if you read the rest of the issue, he gets a mask, but we're only reading this origin story. But I must say, oh boy, this is one of my absolute favorite superheroes. I love this origin. I've read many versions of the origin, and most of them expand on it and explain Hal Jordan's character more and what he was doing before the, we open up and we meet him. But I just think this story is great. I love, love, love the concept of the Green Lantern Corps. I like the fact that, again, we're hit over the head with science fiction. We've got an alien who's wait, does he say he's part of a corps here, or does he just say that he's Green Lantern? Abin Sur. He's part of he's a space patrolman. Right. He's like
I don't think he uses the words like Green Lantern Corps, but he does talk about being part of like a group of people that help protect the galaxy.
Right, because on page 4 he says, a Green Lantern is a power battery given only to selected space patrolmen in the supergalactic system. Like, can you imagine reading this in 1959 and you're a kid? Like, this would just blow your mind, right? And yet they can't get it right when they adapt it. I won't comment on the movie. Everyone hates the movie, but this is one of my favorite superheroes, and I absolutely plan to go on reading all of the Hal Jordan Green Lantern comics, at least up to a point. But Josh, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, it's really great. I don't have a single problem with this origin. It's very simple, to the point. They don't add in a bunch of random subplots that kind of jumble up what's going on. We know who Hal is. We know Abin Sur's mission, and because of the crash and everything, we know some of the powers of the Green Lantern and also his weaknesses. So it's like a great way to show us and not tell us what the Green Lantern is and does. Yeah, honestly, I don't think that there would be anything I would want to change from this. And the art too is just amazing. Like, it's perfect. Yeah, I loved this issue.
Yeah, let's talk about this art. So Gil Kane, one of the best, the most beautiful anatomy of any superhero artist. Just his sense of design, his storytelling, everything's perfect. He's perfect for science fiction because he's able to draw such good spaceships and monsters and aliens and just everything, even just the color. I'm not even sure who the colorist was on this, unfortunately, because they weren't credited at this time. But the color, the fact that Green Lantern's outfit is, like we said earlier, it's green and black and white, but then Abin Sur's skin is pink, right? And then the energy is green and the desert's yellow. Like, it's amazing.
Even the fact that Abin Sur looks alien, but also you can read everything on his face. Like, it's this strange middle ground of being human and alien, without pushing it into this, like, grotesque monster or something to show that he's alien. It's very subtle and works extremely well.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know what to say, but one of the things I hated about the movie with Ryan Reynolds was that it was just all this ugly CGI, right? And just looking at this comic, I would love to see a 1950s Technicolor type, vision or adaptation of Green Lantern with this type of color, where when it's green, it's green. When it's pink, it's pink, right? Like, just this story. I know we're looking at a digital scan right here, but it just looks incredible. And like I said, like, I think of any, maybe other than Superman, I'm more excited to go back and just dive into Silver Age Green Lantern more than any other character. Like, I can't wait to read more of this.
Yeah, it makes me want to go back or start reading this, like, fully.
Absolutely.
From start to finish. So.
And we also should give props to two people, and that's Darwin Cook and Jeff Johns, because, you know, I heard right from the horse's mouth one of the times I met Darwin Cook about how much he hated Emerald Dawn, and he made it a point to do Hal Jordan right when he did New Frontier. And so, have you ever read New Frontier?
No.
Oh my God, you have to read New Frontier. We'll talk about that later. But yes, and we also would like to thank Jeff Johns for doing Rebirth and bringing back Hal Jordan, because I think he really righted a wrong committed by DC. But anyway, so now we're going to talk about the next Green Lantern. Now, Green Lantern, again, on this show, we like to kind of follow characters as they're rebooted throughout the ages. So now Green Lantern gets tricky because his origin was revamped in 1989 with Emerald Dawn. And there was another Green Lantern created before that called Guy Gardner. But Guy Gardner was created as a fill-in Green Lantern and then disappeared. So I wasn't really sure who to pick. So I decided to go with this Green Lantern, who didn't replace Hal Jordan. He just existed alongside him for like 15 years, right? And he's still around. He's just not as used as often. But we should point out that this was the Green Lantern that they used in the classic Justice League Unlimited cartoon, which was awesome, and this was the one they used. Yeah,
I think I was first introduced to John Stewart before Hal Jordan because of that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
right. And I remember being a kid and going to Max Milk and buying comic books off the newsstand, and I remember seeing the issue of Green Lantern. It might have been like 187 or something, where John Stewart is on the cover and he's being carried on a bunch of people's shoulders. I think he's taking his mask off. But anyway, I just remember, so even as a kid, like I knew who John Stewart was, but I didn't really find out more about him until later. So I had read this issue before, but it's been a long time. And this is an interesting one because this is written by Denny O'Neil, drawn by Neal Adams. This is the infamous Green Lantern, Green Arrow run, which helped kind of start the Bronze Age, bringing relevancy to superheroes. And every issue of this short series, they dealt with a different social or political issue, you know, whether it be racism, overpopulation, drug abuse, whatever it may be, right? And so in this issue, I just read the backstory of this issue. Apparently there's 3 stories in this issue, and the second story was written first, and it was submitted by a fan who became a professional writer. Let me just go to dcfandom.com. Really, again, I don't like to do research, but I'm going to do it this time. So there's 3 stories in this issue, and hold on, folks, just bear with me. It's called What Can One Man Do? And it was written by Elliot S. Maggin, who became a Superman writer, or like just a writer at DC. So this was one of his first stories that he submitted, and they used it. The problem was it was so short, they still had to fill out the issue. So at the back of the issue, there's a reprint comic by John Broome and Gil Kane, which actually reprints the first appearance of what's his name, Guy Gardner. Oh no, sorry. No, it reprints an Abin Sur flashback. That's what it is. And so then they filled in the first. Again, this is just to fill pages. But
so interesting.
Why don't we introduce the new Green Lantern? So that's why they introduced John Stewart. Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing. So anyway, so
it's interesting too that this ends up being the cover.
Yes.
And I mean, the cover also doesn't have anything to do with this story. I guess they kind of mentioned that like John Stewart will fill in for Hal if anything happens. Like he's like a backup lantern. But this particular moment does not happen.
Well, yeah, and we can say that back then, honestly, the covers, especially at DC, almost never had anything
right.
What was going. It was just kind of like a way to get you to read the book. But anyway, let's jump into this. We're going to tag team this one. So we open up with so Hal Jordan is in the middle of recharging his ring with the power battery, and all of a sudden there's an earthquake. So then he flies out to find out what's going on, and he sees that there's a bunch of people on a bridge, and there's a girl trapped on like kind of like a piece of the bridge, right? So then we see someone going out to try and save her, and it turns out it's Guy Gardner, because Guy Gardner at this time was a school teacher. So he's walking out on this bridge to save her, and then just at that moment, Hal Jordan comes flying down, and then in the next panel, the piece of the bridge that Guy Gardner was standing on falls. A school bus, some type of bus that was there, crashes into Guy Gardner. The girl is also falling. Hal Jordan uses his ring to rescue the girl, and he rescues Guy Gardner by putting him on like a kind of like a green
gurney kind of thing.
Yeah, right. And then basically we cut over to the hospital, and we find out that now Guy Gardner is in a coma, I believe, right? I think he's in a coma. Or maybe he's not in a coma, he's just injured.
He's injured, right. And this kind of puts pressure on Hal, because now he's like, he can't really take a break. Before, if it got too much, he had it back up. So he's he doesn't really know what to do. And this is where one of the heads of like the tribunal,
the Guardians of the Universe,
contact him, telepathically, and say that it's time for him to pick another understudy. So this is where we kind of flash over to Jon Stewart and see what he's up to. Yeah, so at this point, we see these cops kind of go up to a couple of men in the streets, and they're just there playing chess or something, and the cops are harassing them, and this is where Jon Stewart kind of steps in, is like, hey, you don't know your own laws, like you don't need a permit to sit in public and play a game, like this is BS. And then another cop ends up coming in and kind of moving him along, because this guy is right. And we see Hal is pretty skeptical of the choice. He's like, I think it's true, he might be brave and he might be doing things that are just, but he doesn't like the way that he is doing it. He doesn't like the way he's going about it. So, and of course, this guardian is like, yeah, that's too bad. That's kind of just like, this is our choice. So, Hal and John go grab a drink together. They're chatting, and John agrees to be his understudy and train with him. So we cut over to the rooftop. Oh, yeah, sure.
We have to reference two things that have been said so far. On page 5, when Hal Jordan first sees Jon Stewart, he says, "That's the man you want to trust with a power ring, the finest weapon ever devised?" And then the Guardian of the Universe says, "He has all due qualifications, and we are not interested in your petty bigotries." So now he's accusing Hal Jordan of racism.
Right.
But on the next page, Jon Stewart says, "Sure, I'll try your gig. Might be laughs being a superhero. My mama named me Jon Stewart, Square John to my friends. Only from now on, maybe you better call me Black Lantern." Okay, who the hell is writing this? But anyway,
it's not great.
No. So but anyway, so go ahead. So what happens next?
They're training on the rooftops. He teaches him about the lantern and the ring, and he also dresses him up in his costume and starts teaching him how to fly around the city. And yeah, it's kind of just like a little mini training montage, and like costume suit up and whatnot. We also learned that John doesn't want to wear the mask. He actually tosses it aside. And he says, "Only one thing, I won't wear any mask. This black man lets it all hang out. I've got nothing to hide." So it's kind of cool, actually, that he's like, you know what, I'm not going to hide my face. Like, I'm a proud black man, and I'm going to, be me and not just kind of this person behind the mask. Even though you can see, the Green Lantern, the color of the Green Lantern skin. It's a nice kind of, I think maybe the only part in this book that is subtle in any way of their message.
Sure.
Yeah, so they're flying around, and they end up at an airport, and an oil truck is like screeching out of control during this like big like this big crowd has kind of gathered because a racist senator that is running for president shows up, and they have to kind of save the day. So Hal, flies in and scoops all of the civilians up and gets them to safety, and John grabs the oil truck as it's flying towards the senator and the airplane, and in doing so he punctures a hole into the oil truck, which splashes directly onto Senator Jeremiah Clutcher.
Right.
And he says something outrageous about him being in blackface, essentially, because he's got oil all over him. And John kind of scolds him for this and says, "You were stupid and impressionable." So he's not very happy. And John kind of like plays it off like, "Oops, I accidentally hit him." And, Hal doesn't believe this.
Right.
And John's kind of like, I'm going to start doing things my way. I'm not really, interested in playing by the book. I'm not going to do it like you do.
And he also points out that this guy running for president is a racist, and he figures on climbing to the White House on the backs of my people, right? So they're really, at this point, they're hitting you over the head with what the politics are, which you can like it or not like it, but that's what this is about.
Right.
So, but then Hal Jordan says back to him, "Oh, one last thing, don't call me Whitey." Something in that reminds me of that bit about he who is without sin casting the first stone, right? Mm-hmm. So right away they're at odds with each other a little bit, but it makes it interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So then they end up going to this political rally where this guy is, and then I like this, and I'll explain why later. They're sitting here watching this, and then all of a sudden, a guy from the crowd, a black man, pulls out a gun and shoots at the senator. So then Hal Jordan flies down to catch who he calls the assassin. So then Jon Stewart said, or Hal Jordan says, the assassin is escaping, move. And Jon Stewart says, "Not me, you go chasing him, I'm leaving." So then Hal Jordan chases him down, punches him out, but then just as at that moment we see that there's another person holding a submachine gun, and he's behind a cop. He takes aim at the cop, but then all of a sudden we see a green energy thing push the cop out of the way, and it's Jon Stewart. And he's like, "Oh, look at this, we got a junior grade Al Capone lurking behind the cars." And he locks them up in like a green thing, and then basically Hal Jordan comes over and starts scolding him, and then he's like, basically Jon Stewart explains what happened. He says, "I spotted the pistol packer with the senator this afternoon at the airport. Likewise, I spotted the machine gun artist. I asked myself, why is one shooting and the other missing? The answer is in the gun you're holding, Green Lantern." He's talking to Hal Jordan. And then Hal Jordan empties the gun and he sees it's filled with blanks. And he said, "Yeah, it's a frame. While Pistol Pete was blasting the senator with blanks, the real killing was supposed to take place in the parking lot." So basically, it was just to set up the black guy, right? To make him look like the bad guy.
Right.
So, and then that's pretty much it. So then the story gets resolved, and then in the last panel, they're kind of sitting together, and Hal Jordan says, "I'll admit, John, your style turned me off. I was more than ready to stick blame on you." And then John says, "No sweat, pal. Only style isn't important any more than color." Wah, wah, wah. The end.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate what they're going for.
Yeah.
I like Jon Stewart as a character. It is very ham-fisted. Like, it's so on the nose what they're doing. It's very obvious. But I do like this character, and I do want to read more. And I don't think I've read too many Jon Stewart comics, but this definitely makes me want to go out and find a run written by a black writer, because I feel like this could be done super well, and having somebody with that perspective writing for this character, I think would be great.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just say that this run of Green Lantern, Green Arrow was the first classic comic book that I read that I really did not like. And it sort of opened my eyes a little bit, because as time goes on, there was this period where grim and gritty was in style and realism was in style. But this was one of the comics that made me realize, no, you know what? I'd rather read the John Broome, Gil Kane Green Lantern. I'd rather read the science fiction-y stuff. Not to say that this is bad. I just don't think it clicks as well as the other stuff. And there's definitely something to be said for superheroes that deal with real subject matter and real politics, but I just don't think they were quite there yet. To be honest, I don't think Denny O'Neil's a great writer. I don't know if you remember, Josh, but we came across some Denny O'Neil stories in Spider-Man. You remember the stories where, what was it, the girl asked Peter Parker to help and he refused because he doesn't go in the water or something?
Yeah, that was Deb Whitman.
It was Deb Whitman. I thought so. Okay.
Yeah. It was like, my uncle is, having trouble at the docks or whatever, and he's like, yeah, that's just not my problem.
Bitch. Yeah, it is. Yeah, okay.
Not great.
That's Denny O'Neil, Peter Parker for you. I don't know. I mean, he might have written some good stuff, but I've hardly come across it, so I'm not a big fan of his writing. Now we've got to talk about Neal Adams. Unfortunately, Neal Adams passed away, I believe, only a year ago. One of the greatest superhero artists ever. You can't argue that. I think this cover is incredible. But it actually points out, it actually calls attention to something. Apparently, Neal Adams either made more money or he was more wanted as a cover artist because his covers sold a comic more than his interiors.
Wow.
Now, the ironic thing about that is that while I do love this cover, I actually thought the interiors were very sloppy by Neal Adams standards.
Oh, really?
I think Neal Adams is a great artist, but this particular story, I mean, I was reading up some behind-the-scenes stuff, and there might have been some deadline problems around this time, but I really think these interiors are sloppy. What do you think?
I didn't mind them, I guess. There were moments that felt a little iffy, but I thought, all in all, I liked the interiors as well.
Okay.
I particularly like the stuff at the beginning, actually, with Guy Gardner. I really like that they showed the reason why he was kind of out of commission, and also why he was chosen as a backup Green Lantern. Okay. This whole scene I really like, and visually I think is some of the best stuff in this issue. Particularly when he's like flying out of the building, you can really see the movement there. I love the intensity of this bridge falling and the visual of the little girl on the end. I think the layouts and the blocking and everything is really well done.
I mean, again, like, he still is one of the best artists. It's just that by his standards, I think this is, in my opinion, sloppy.
That's fair.
Compared to some of his other work. Yeah. But anyway, again, I'm a big fan of this character. I actually was not a huge fan of the way he was portrayed in the Justice League cartoon. I thought his voice, no offense to the voice actor, but it was a little bit dull, a little bit flat.
He's more stoic. He's very he feels almost like a different character in the cartoon.
Yes.
Like, this character feels very different. It's almost like it was Hal Jordan, but they just kind of switched the name. And the look of the character. Could say that, yeah. Because especially seeing their dynamic here, like, Hal very much seems like the by the book, no nonsense guy, and Jon Stewart is more laxed and he's going to do things his way, and he's very street smart, and he's going to kind of think more with, like, visually what he sees and investigating and his kind of experience with life, where Jon is very, like, learned everything in a book, kind of, this is how you're supposed to be doing it, so we're going to do it this way.
I did read most of because what happened was, for you historians out there, Green Lantern Green Arrow was canceled with number 89. And then 4 years later, they revived it with a different writer. And then they picked up the numbering. But so I've read almost every issue of Green Lantern from about 90 to about 225 when it was canceled. And when they brought Jon Stewart back into like, the fore, I was shocked to learn that at that time, Jon Stewart didn't know that Hal Jordan was Green Lantern. So unless I'm misremembering this, he would see Hal Jordan talk to him and see Green Lantern. I'm like, how does he not know who he is yet? But again, we always find this out when we go back and read these 80s comics, how like Peter Parker doesn't know, or Doctor Strange doesn't know Peter Parker. Spider-Man, Wolverine doesn't know. Like, no one knows each other's secret identity. It was kind of cool back then. I like that,
Yeah.
There was still some discovery to be made.
It's strange that the Lanterns don't know each other, though.
Right.
Like, it makes sense that, like, Green Lantern doesn't know that Superman is Clark Kent, but
yes.
It's strange that John and Hal don't know each other.
Yeah, because they're the Green Lantern Corps. They should all be working together
right.
out of, like, why do they need a mask when they're in outer space and no one knows who they are, right? Yeah, good point. Actually, I should point out that like, again, my copyrighted phrase is that Silver Age stories are professional writers writing for children, and Bronze Age comics are amateur writers writing for adults. And so many times, I think that the writers of the 70s and 80s were like, took things literally in this weird way, and like the writers of the 50s were smarter, and like they were like, no, clearly Hal Jordan just decided to create an identity on the spot and just created this domino mask. But later on, when they started adding all these Green Lantern Corps characters, I don't know if you've seen them, but like, there's like aliens that are Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
But there would be like Grasshopper Green Lantern with like a mask. And like
right.
Jellyfish Green Lantern with a mask. You know what I mean? And it's kind of quaint and funny, but at the same time, totally illogical. I mean, not to say that you wouldn't need a secret identity just because you're a jellyfish, but it is sort of a superhero Earth concept. So anyway, it's just kind of like funny, like one of those things. But anyway, so I don't know what else that there is to say about, we agree that we're both Green Lantern fans. We had that terrible movie that destroyed the character for 20 years. And then we had the Justice League movie by, what's his name? Zack Snyder. Now, has this ever been addressed? The tagline of the film was Unite the Seven, and there's only 6 characters in the movie.
Right.
There's no Green Lantern. Who the hell's the 7th character? Has that ever been addressed?
I think originally it was supposed to be Martian Manhunter, right? Because he's in the Snyder Cut. Yeah,
but in like a post-credit scene.
No, he's in the Snyder Cut. He's in it throughout.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gotcha. Anyway, just something to think about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen like flashes of Green Lanterns throughout. We saw it in Justice League during like the big dark side battle. There's lanterns there. We get references to them in Blue Beetle. There's references to Green Lantern. But they're hinting at it, and I'm sure that he'll be back, but they really need to do it right. Like, they need to make it, again, it's a science fiction story, and he needs to be a cop. So I don't need to see the whole concept dismantled in order to make the character good. Just do Hal Jordan as a space cop, and I think it'll work. That's my final word about that. But anyway. It also seems like they're trying not to do origins. So I think you could just have Hal Jordan already an established Lantern. You could even adapt something similar to this comic where he needs backup, like he needs more help. So he's going to recruit Jon Stewart, and it's going to be the two of them kind of doing some sort of space, you know.
But here's the thing, though, is they just did Blue Beetle, and they showed his origin. They showed Aquaman's origin. They showed Wonder Woman's origin.
But
so whose origin are they not showing? You know what I mean?
Well, like Superman's origin in Superman and Batman and all that in this new rebooted DC universe is apparently they're trying to not do origins necessarily of some of the characters. So.
Well, I do know that apparently the Green Lantern movie is going to be Hal Jordan and Green and Jon Stewart as like a true detective type thing, which I think is a great idea.
Okay, yeah.
Have them just solving cases, like that's what it is. It's almost like, has this ever been done right? I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and read these Silver Age stories to find out, but I hope it's been done right. But we'll find out on another episode. But before we get to that, on Slam and our next episode, we are going to be talking about none other than a Batman again. It's Batman Part 2, and we are gonna jump right ahead. We're gonna summarize some brief recapped origins throughout the 70s and 80s, but then we're gonna do a classic comic called Untold Legend of Batman. Josh, have you ever read this comic?
Untold Legend of Batman. It's not ringing a bell.
Freaking awesome.
Really?
They basically summarized they took every version of Batman's origin and they made it into a cohesive story, and I'm so excited to go back and reread this.
Whoa,
so anyway,
interesting.
Untold Legend of Batman, yeah, that's our next episode of Slam. Then on our next episode of Taped Crusaders, we're going to be talking about, let me just check the schedule here, folks, hold on. We're going to be talking about a Swamp Thing, Wes Craven's Swamp Thing, and we're not. Oh, yes, we are. No, we're not.
It's Superman 2.
It's Superman 2. Oh my gosh, I jumped the gun. Swamp Thing's after that, but in our next episode, we're going to be talking about Superman 2, and we haven't decided which version we're going to do yet, so I think we should just go ahead and review both of them. But anyway, so be sure to join us for both of those episodes. It's going to be a fun time. We also, once the strike is over, we'll be releasing our reviews of all the new movies, as well as the episodes of Taped Crusaders. And and Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening or watching the podcast. Please leave us a comment or review over on our Facebook or on our YouTube channel. You can find all of our other stuff on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. Please let us know what you guys think about the comics and the stuff that we're talking about. Let's keep that comics conversation going, so keep in touch.
That's right. Until the next time, see you later.
Bye.